Welcome to Elm Elaborates. This is Season 2, Episode 18, From Textiles to Tenants. This is going to be a deep dive into our project in Burlington, North Carolina.
Thanks for having me back.
Yeah.
We're doing it. This is our third one now, huh?
Yeah, I figured Cameron was busy, so we would invite you back.
Well, I'm honored. I wore the Elm Builder shirt today to feel like I'm a part of the team.
Appreciate it. Did someone remind you of that, or did
Maybe.
you actually? Yeah. Yeah, Burlington.
Burlington, North Carolina.
2 years ago?
2 years ago.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Love it. Yeah, so I don't really remember much of what happened as far as due diligence and purchasing. And do you want to give us a quick background on how we actually bought the building?
Yeah. So Burlington, North Carolina, for those of you who don't know, it's a town right in between sort of the Raleigh-Durham and the Greensboro market. And so we drive up when we go see our sites that are past Greensboro. We drive on I-40, which goes right through Burlington. So very familiar with the market. And always kind of kept our eye on it. We really like the strategy of finding projects either on the path that we're already on. Obviously, we gain a lot of efficiencies from, due diligence from the acquisition side to obviously construction, as you know, and then of course management at the end. So, Burlington, Mebane or Mebane, some people call it different things, but they're right side by side there. So we'd always kind of been looking in that area because there's a lot of good things happening there. There's a college right near there, Elon University. And so, our acquisition team found this building and thought it was a great use for self-storage. When we first started looking at the building, there was a basement component to it. And from the pictures, it looked like the basement was all concrete. It looked like it was going to meet the structural loads for storage, which we've talked about. Structural loads for storage are very
high.
Very high.
Yeah.
So that in a multi-story facility, especially an existing building, that's always something that we check during our due diligence phase. So can the floor loads support the weight of storage, which is 125 pounds per square foot, or do we have to reinforce the floors like we did at Kernersville?
Yeah.
And of course, what comes with that, engineering costs, all that good stuff. So acquisitions team found the site, and we liked the market a lot already. We went under contract with it, made a site visit up there, really clean building, met the owner. He actually has a building across the street from us that he was operating out of.
Yeah.
Still does textiles. He makes socks. Which is pretty cool.
For the Army, right?
Yeah, he does some contracts for the U.S. Army, so that's pretty fascinating. He actually made us our Nomad socks that we have in office. Yeah,
I didn't know that.
Yeah, it was that seller.
Really?
So when we created, we have Nomad socks that we give away at conferences and other places, and we all wear them because they're great socks.
Why don't we have Elm Builder socks?
Well, we know who to call.
Yeah.
I've got a contact for that. So we looked online, and quick side story on the socks. We looked online and we're looking at, all these places to get socks in. And then Drake on our acquisitions team said, hey, we should reach out to the seller and see if he'll do a small batch for us. And he's like, absolutely. So
that's awesome.
So anyways, he offices across the street from us now, didn't need this building. It's been in his family for a long time. Price was great. So first site visit up there, we got to meet him. We always prefer to meet the seller or the owner, just really get to shake hands and tell them about our story, father, son, family oriented, just kind of tell them about who we are. And, a handshake goes a long way, especially in North Carolina. And so, went under contract, and we found this out later, but after we had closed, I got a call from a broker that we use sometimes. Great contact for us, just provided a lot of value to our group. But he called me a couple weeks after we closed, and he said, dude, I literally saw this building. I sent it to my brother. And I said, we should do this as a storage conversion.
No
and then
way.
It went pending next week. And he's like, oh, man, somebody bought it. And then he saw when the tax records cleared that it was Nomad. And he had to call me. He's like, dude, I saw it. Like, this is going to be a great site. And so that was always cool. I mean, it's great to get other confirmation from somebody that does this day in and day out. So, looked at the building. It was super clean. Burlington was really the first project that you were, like, fully on board with, right?
Yeah, I remember we had just closed on the building, and we walked into the kitchen, and your dad handed me the keys. I'm like, he doesn't even know who I am. He just handed me the keys to a $1.5 million, $2 million building. Like, what is he thinking? So, it's when I pretty much first started.
Yeah. Because we talked about Gastonia, and Gastonia, we were already under construction. Midway or, we had kind of started, we'd done very little, but we were in the process of it. And then we kind of brought you on board.
Yeah, we had plans, but there no hammers were swung or, there was no demo. But Yeah, so I was able to jump into that one, but Burlington, I took that from the start with plans.
Did you help
permitting.
with the plans on that one?
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
So that was the first one. Then maybe that's the biggest difference is that's when you were like, okay, in the early phases
Yeah.
of the acquisition, like, hey, here's the project, here's our engineers, here's our architects.
Yeah, that was my first TRC review and all that great
yeah,
stuff.
Yep. That was fun.
Yeah, still thinking about that. Yeah.
So Burlington, I think it's 55,000 square feet, right at 60,000 square feet, I
something
think.
like
And then there's a decent amount of parking next door, so we really like that about the site.
Just under an acre.
Just under an acre, yeah.
I know that because the TRC that I was just talking about, if you're under an acre, you don't have to pave it. And we
Or do stormwater.
Or stormwater and all that kind of stuff. So that's how we got away with it.
Yeah. So the plan was always to do parking next door, which was great. The local competition there wasn't a lot of boat and RV parking. So we really like that. Plus, boat and RV is a great value add someday. So if we're holding the asset long term, we look at our parking as, hey, if we fill up the facility, there's a need for it, there's demand for it, then we can add either box well units, or actual storage units, and expand because we can get more price per square foot for those.
Right.
But then in the short term, it is a cheaper construction cost.
Oh, yeah.
We got to do rock and gravel and a fence,
No offense.
but relatively cheap.
Yeah.
And then we can lease it out for parking and for rentals. So I remember the site. Did you walk that corner of the building that was the original part of the building?
Yes, I walked it one time. Yeah,
So
before we demoed it.
So in the corner of this building was the existing part of this building that they've added on over the years. And that's kind of a common theme with some of these older warehouses and textile mills is they used to have this structure and then they added on in the 50s and then 70s and then 90s and they just kind of pieced them together and now they have this decent building, but it's always fun to roof those.
Yeah.
Because there's
it's so easy.
there's so many it's just really fun. You got all these roof lines and
so many impediments of the water and trying to reroute everything and re-slope everything.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's fun.
Yeah. So anyways, our original plan when we walked it in this old part of the building, I think it was only like 3,000 square feet.
If that. It was
2,000 square feet.
Yeah, it was like 2,000 or 1,500. It was a small space.
And I remember that, we had our engineers there and architects and we're designing this and we're like, okay, great. We're going to demo out the walls, we'll reframe the floor and we'll put a few units in here. I think we had like maybe 8 units in there.
Yeah, I think it was about 8 or 10.
It was funky.
Small.
It was, small units. It was just a really choppy area, but we're like, let's maximize the space. And I remember getting a call from John. I think he called you or he called me. I know he called me, but he was like, after we had demoed it out, I mean, the walls were so termite rotten.
Yeah.
And the roof had been leaking for,
I don't know, a decade?
10, 20 years. I mean, you could basically push the structure down. So he put these temporary braces in there and is like, I don't think we can save this.
Yeah.
But we're going to spend so much money on this one little corner and we're going to gain 8 units. And so we had to make a pivot change and we had to revise our permit because we had just gotten our permit back from TRC, which we went through and they said, you're good to build this thing. We get into demo and we're like, we need to revise our permit because we actually want to demo this little part of the building out and create some parking here, create access from both sides. And so that was right off the bat. I think we talk about this or we do talk about this, you create a plan. You get plans drawn.
This
is going to be great. Yep, you got engineers, you got everybody on board, you got a plan, you got demo guys there, and then you open the walls up, and there's the 2x4s are just completely rotted out.
Yeah,
and I think it's just so clear. You have to be able to pivot in these conversions.
For sure.
Pivot should be a core value of ours. We're pivotable.
Yeah.
And so we had to pivot, and so we had to reapply for a alteration or reapply in our permit there. And then, do you remember they put a stop work order on us?
Yeah, I was about to say before that we got the stop work order.
Yeah.
Would you like me to explain that?
Please do. I was teeing it up for you. Good sir.
Thanks. So, we basically submitted our plans, and they said we're really behind. It's going to take a while. So we asked them, hey, can we have a demo only permit, which is pretty common. And they said, well, we don't do that, but you can go ahead and demo. And that was a phone conversation. And so I said, I understand that you're telling me I can do the demo over the phone. However, I'm going to need that in writing just in case someone, pokes up on our job site and asks us for a permit. And they said, yeah, we could just write you a quick email, but we can't actually give you a permit. And I was like, well, okay, yeah, that'll work. If it's from the city, that should suffice. We start demo. 2 days later, somebody comes knocking. Says, hey, where's your permit? And they had an iPad, and they were looking through all the permits, and they're like, this address has no permit. You need to stop work right now. I'm putting a stop work order on this building.
Yep.
And so I get a phone call, obviously, with our site superintendent, John, who was like, hey, they're shutting us down. What happened? And I was like, no, I have an email. And so the inspector who's on site, who shut down the job, they gave him the phone, and he called me, and he's like, so who told you could do demo? And I said, well, it was a lady named Sherry. And he's like, Sherry? And I said, yeah, I can send you the email if you want. He said, Sherry's my wife. I'll give her a call. And so he's on site, and he called Sherry, and Sherry said, yes, absolutely. I did let them go ahead and do demo. So, yeah, it was crazy how that happened. I said, oh, I love Sherry. And he's like, yeah, Sherry's my wife. I was like, I didn't mean it like that.
You can't make this up.
Yeah.
You cannot make this up.
So that's how the project started.
I wonder how dinner was that night
Yeah,
around the table.
must have been
there.
pretty.
Hey, what about this 110 Broad Street? What were you thinking sending me?
Yeah, I know. I was just so glad I had the email because I got the phone call. Because I asked for it in the moment. I was like, imagine if I needed this. Like, nobody's going to believe like somebody told me that over the phone. I'll just grab an email. I'll probably never have to use this. And sure enough, 2 days later, I was like, I have the email.
And it was from his wife. That's the best part of that story. Husband and wife working at the city. And after that, he called you back and said, yeah, you're good.
Oh, yeah. No, he was great after that. Yeah. After that, everything went great.
Yeah.
Till we got to the fence. But
always get it in writing.
Yes.
Always get it in writing.
Always get it in writing.
Yeah. It's just a great story. And that kind of just, when we meet people on site, especially sellers, we make it a really good point to build good relationships, or we try to build really good relationships with the building inspectors, building department. We always just take the approach of, look, we're not used to building in Burlington, so like give us your processes and your systems, and we're here to put a good product out. And I think that goes a long way.
It does.
Because we're not just this out-of-town GC, hey, we're going to build, here's what we're very collaborative, and I really think that goes a long way in, situations where you maybe didn't file the right paperwork or something else happened, or you did get an email. Technically it should be on a form, but hey, I gave them the email. That kind of stuff goes a long way.
And if they did have a demo permit, they would have let us, but that wasn't a thing in that city.
And every city's different.
Every city's different.
Every city's different. Every TRC
Most
is
will
different.
give you a demo permit. That's why I think they were just like, yeah, you can do demo. That's fine.
Yeah.
I was like, okay.
I think John showed the building inspector like what we were demoing.
Yeah.
And I think he said like, yeah, this is a safety hazard, just keeping it up. Like tear it down. Like this is about to fall down. And John's like, yeah, I know, that's what we're trying to tear it down.
Yeah.
So
yeah, it is sometimes like when you have a conversation with somebody, it's like, hey, buddy, and then it's like, hey, can you write that down? And there is some awkwardness to that. Sometimes it's tough to navigate, but I think most of the time it's worth it. All the time it's worth it.
Yep.
Some people just get weary, but you got to do what you got to do. Yeah. So we bought the building. We started demo. They pulled our permit. They gave us our permit back.
I mean, honestly, after that, it was really a pretty smooth project, right?
Yeah.
I mean, you got to admit that it was pretty smooth.
It was smooth, thanks to John. But I realized that when someone asked me where to stay in Burlington, I never stayed overnight because we focused so hard on Gastonia. And John was just at Burlington, just taking care of Burlington. So I remember you and I stopped back. It was like 4 or 5 months later. Obviously, I'm in the day-to-day managing the project, but not seeing it. And we stopped back, and it was about halfway through, maybe 60%. We were blown away by the progress and how fast that happened.
Yeah. Yeah, we're getting updates on our software and, our internal stuff, obviously. But, John absolutely took that one and absolutely ran with it. We had previously done a project in Greensboro, which Burlington and Greensboro are about 20 minutes apart. And so we were able to pull some subcontractors from Greensboro. Yep. I remember that because
we had to do 2 backflows.
Okay, that was it. Yeah, so we had to install
which
2
were not in our budget.
Yeah, they were cheap too.
Yeah, no, they were only like $60,000 a piece.
Yeah, I think that we don't highlight it enough, the team here and the job that you do, and I'm just going to give you a shout out.
Thanks,
and everybody on the Elm team. When you have curveballs like we talked about, like, hey, we have a full set of plans, we're stamped, we got our permit, TRC's good. Oh wait, we have to demo this part. The team and the ability of this team, this team can pivot so quick. That is huge. hey, we didn't account for these backflows because the TRC had, they didn't put the note right, or they said, hey, we're actually requiring this type of backflow.
Yep.
And they're $60,000 a piece, and you need 2 of them. How do you find $120,000 in a budget when you're already writing contracts? You're already moving on the project.
Yeah. So that's a great
check your
question.
pants.
we do a weekly budget review. We've gotten way better. So Burlington was actually the first project, probably because of that. I don't remember the exact reason, but we started doing budget reviews and we made a budget review template, which sounds easy, but we got it wrong a bunch of times, and we finally got a template that we're absolutely in love with, and we actually use it every week. So line item by line item, the roof, the foundation, the concrete, the storage. Where can we save 10 grand? Where can we save 2 grand? So just breaking it all down. If we save 2 grand here, 10 grand here, 30 grand here, the paint, let's not paint the basement, let's just paint the up top. Yep. So you got to think about where you can save all this money, and then you might find 120 grand. I know it sounds crazy, but you can do it. You just have to, get these expectations right of what the final product's going to be, because this is a requirement. We have to get there. And so luckily there was also a contingency line item. So we took from some areas and we found 120 grand.
Like, just to stay on that for a minute, we have city storage or the end user in office here, right?
Yeah.
It's us. So that makes some decisions, easier. Hey, what we need to achieve for our overall investment here.
Yep.
What's the look we need to achieve? What's the feel we need to achieve? What's the paint colors? And really, work with the client, which is ourselves, work within the building, to create that, hey, we've got to save some money. This was a curveball. We've got to solve this because this is what the city requires. It wasn't clear. They never brought it up, whatever it may be. And so the ability to pivot on that sense is huge. And then on top of that, you talked about the budget, the weekly tracker.
Yeah.
People think it's like, okay, you have a contract for, $10,000. You've either paid it or you've not paid it. Commercial construction, for people that don't know, is you'll have multiple pay apps on a single invoice, which complicates it even more.
Yep.
You'll have a $100,000 contract, and then you'll have pay app 1, pay app 2, but then in pay app 3, there was actually an addition because we had a change order because we needed to move these lights, or we had a credit back because we took away these lights.
Yep.
Right? And
so
speak to that a little bit.
Yeah, so your budget is living.
Yes.
Since we've got into this room, one of the budgets on one of our projects has changed.
Yes.
Because I can hear Kyle entering stuff right now. So in a split second,
poor guy.
The budget is living. Either we've saved money or we spent more money or this or that. So when we do our budget reviews, we have to take a live screenshot and extract all the data of exactly where we are on all of our line items, how much we've spent, not only how much we've spent in the moment, how much we're going to spend.
Yes.
So, like you said, if the roof is $100,000, but in the moment we've only spent 40 grand because they just started yesterday, right?
Yep.
We had to pay the deposit. The budget isn't 40 grand for that roof. The budget's 100 grand, but your data is going to tell you you've only spent 40.
Yep.
So you have to make up for that by projecting. So that's what's so tricky. You have to have a snapshot of where you are, where you're going to be, and then project on top of that. So there's actually 3 levels to it to forecast a budget accurately. Yeah,
I just wanted to highlight that for a minute because I think we've talked about it before, but commercial construction, people think you show up, you build stuff, and you leave. And the back end and really being good at the back end and accurately forecasting. Then you throw a schedule on top of that, all that budget stuff, right? So you throw a schedule on top of, okay, trying to forecast 3 different financial metrics, and then also forecast, okay, we've got 20 different subs that need to be in here over the next 3 months, and we have to get them in there in this order because they have to do this inspection, and then we have to get this approval, and then you layer all that in there, and I think that's the backside that, part of this podcast is to talk about that of like, hey, there's more that goes on with commercial GC, with commercial construction than typically people know about.
100%.
And it's just good to know. It's a hard business, right?
Yes.
If it were easy, everyone would do it, and it is not easy. It is very challenging.
Yeah, and a lot of these problems, you could do the same project 4 or 5 times, but it'll get you once, and then you'll think it won't get you again, but it'll show its face just a little bit different, and you're like, you might remember that one thing, but it might just get you just a little bit different. So, it's a lot of doing and learning and just making every time you get burned, you just try to make a process out of that. And
Yeah.
if you're doing that in commercial construction, you're doing better than probably 70% of the guys out there.
1% better every day.
Exactly.
Yeah. Let's pivot from the budget here. And we were talking about issues before we got on, and we talked about the bank area there. But as we were building out the whole site, I remember, because Burlington was probably the first project where I used to sit in the role you're in. It was probably the first project that I'd really taken a step back and sort of let you kind of own that, because we knew you could own it, obviously. And we kind of said, hey, here's your project. Here's what we're trying to achieve. I was still there. Right?
Yeah.
I mean, we were communicating every day. But for me, I kind of took a step back and kind of let Ryan own the seat that he's in. And so talk to me about, because I remember our parking became an issue when we went to put our fence in.
Yes.
Quick side thing for people that don't know, we're right next to the railroad tracks. So there's railroad tracks that go right through downtown Burlington. Quick side story. My dad, we were in Gastonia, which we have got another site there. My dad actually took the train from Gastonia to Burlington, and we picked him up on one of our site visits.
That's awesome.
That was just cool.
That's really cool.
He just wanted to try it. He just wanted to do it, and so he literally left Gastonia, hopped on the train. He said it was great. It was like an hour and a half ride. He was like getting some emails, looking out the window, and then the train station, you can see it from our building.
Yeah, it's right there.
And so he got dropped off there, and I think maybe he even walked over. But
Yeah.
it was just kind of like
It's literally right there.
Founder, owner, taking a train across North Carolina just for the fun of it. So I just thought that was really cool.
Yeah.
But anyways, when we went to put the fence in, talk a little bit about that, because I know we had some challenges with the railroad.
Yeah, and like you mentioned, this was the first time you were hands off, and I was like just trying to figure stuff out without bothering you about it because I knew you were busy. So I don't know how much you got involved. I think I was just kind of took it and ran with it, but man, it was relentless dead ends to install a fence. So basically, we applied for a fence permit. You have to apply for a separate fence permit. So we had our fencing subcontractor local to the area. That's always a huge help. And they applied for a fence permit, and they said, we got denied. And I was like, oh, how? Like, it's on our plan.
Fence, I mean,
yeah, it's a fence on our plan. How could you possibly get denied? He's like, well, the city was going to approve it, but then the railroad shot it down. I'm like, who is the railroad, and what are they doing with our plan set? So then we got the railroad involved, and they were like, yeah, like you're close to our railroad. And we were like, no, this is definitely on our land. They're like, yeah, it's debatable. Do you want to rent that strip of land from us? And I was like, not really, but how much is it? They're like, well, one of those answers. Well, it could be, maybe $5,000 to $8,000 a year. Then we build in these escalators, so like in 10 years it'll probably be like double or something, like depending on the value of the. And I was like, all right, no, like I can't sign up for that. First of all, I'm not writing leases, and I'm in construction. I don't do that, so I'm not going to do that. So basically, we thought we were in the right, and we had a land surveyor confirm we were in the right, and our plans were approved, and they still wouldn't let us install the fence. And their claim was that the existing railroad track where it is now was moved in sometime in the 1970s, but originally it was built in 1860 or 1880.
Yep.
So the center line of the track was a little bit closer to our land than it is now. So they're saying, no, that is their land. So our surveyor says, no, I went back to 1905 or something, and it wasn't moved back then, so you are in the right. And I was like, oh, can I see that survey? You ever seen a survey from 1910?
I have not.
It is literally.
Did we get that survey?
Yeah. It's
I
a sheet.
gotta see that.
Yeah, it was a sheet of paper.
That's actually awesome.
With rectangles saying Bob's property. 100 feet.
Yo.
It was crazy. It was like general store 360 feet away.
I actually I need to see that.
Yeah.
I can't believe I didn't see that.
It's crazy.
That is awesome.
So I'm like, I don't know if he's right. Because
you're like, this is what we're going off of? All right.
Yeah, I was like, okay. I was like, maybe we have a leg to stand on. It looks right, but I don't know. So I put these two people on a email chain. Boy, was that a mistake. They just started yelling at each other.
Oh, gosh.
And so I'm sitting back watching this transpire. It was like every 2 minutes.
You're just watching the emails pop through.
Yeah, every 2 minutes. Ha, he, ha, he. So I was like, oh, my goodness, what did I do? So finally, they both said that they were right. And I've got a deadline to hit. So I was like, All right. What if we move the fence 5 foot in? Can we get away with moving it in, just sneaking in a little bit? It's not really going to change our metrics and the parking. We had this super wide drive aisle. So if we cheated in 5 foot, would we not have to lease the land? Would we not have a problem? The surveyor didn't want to. He's like, no, you're in the right. I'm like, okay, I understand. If we just cheated in, can we install the fence, tomorrow, basically? And they said yes. So that's what we did. We cheated in the fence just a little bit. Yep. Everybody signed off, got it in writing.
Yep.
And we moved forward. And that's, sometimes it's like, it's not worth the battle. Yeah. Like how long would that battle have taken? They were both adamant that they were correct. And so we didn't lose much by just cheating it in.
Well, we had it in our drive aisle anyway. So I remember it didn't change our parking.
No.
It wasn't like, we lose all these spots now, right? Now we can't rent them out.
No. Our drive aisle was like a foot or two or 5 foot less, but
we had the room anyways.
We had a ton of drive aisle. Yeah.
During all of this, when this is happening, you looped me in very little.
Yeah.
Which I appreciated, right? That's, as you build a team, especially as the owner, that can be a challenging place to be, where you find great people, put them in the seat they're supposed to be in, and then the last step of that is letting them own that, which is scary because obviously he's over here. I trust him to make the decision because he knows where the vision is. He knows what we're trying to achieve. But at the end of the day, I wasn't on any of those emails.
Yeah.
I wasn't talking about how do we get this thing done with, because that was going to hold up our CEO for the whole project. Because we never separated the parking from the building. So, I think from our standpoint, it's so cool to hear all those emails and you tackling that and saying, okay, what do we need to do to get this project done? Yeah. Railroads are notorious for being the most challenging ever to work around. Like if you have to do any utility or anything near a railroad, that will kill a project.
Yeah, the tricky part was that it took a minute for me to realize, but the person representing the railroad was a real estate agent that was sponsored by the railroad. So they get commissions on land leases and certain things. So it clicked when they said, do you want to sign a lease? And they kept following up, like, do you want to sign a lease?
Here's the lease. Yeah.
And I knew in my head that that's not what we wanted as an owner. As a GC, if I wasn't interested in saving money, I would have been like, yeah, let's have the owner sign a lease. But I knew that's not what you'd want. I knew you wouldn't want escalators in your lease.
That's an expense on the P&L, right?
And it's an unknown expense. They're just like, we'll escalate it
for something that we worked around.
Yeah.
And the last thing on that is sometimes it's okay to push back a little bit and say, no, this doesn't seem right. And I do remember that the survey guy that we used was the guy that we had originally done the Alta survey when we bought the property.
Yes, it was.
So we always do an Alta survey. It's a little bit of extra money than just a boundary survey, but it's worth doing.
Yeah.
And so could we have pushed back and fought even more to not lose that 5 feet? Probably. We probably would have. But then the flip side of that is how much time, how much effort, how much everything would have gone into that. And then at the end of the day, we still were able to achieve what we wanted to. Yeah. So it's kind of like, hey, is this a hill we're going to die on?
Yeah.
Or can we still achieve what we need to? We can achieve it. All right, let's move on because we have other projects. Let's get this thing open. Let's get it leasing up. Let's get it rented,
And which we did. The parking lot.
Parking lots, I think it's full. I mean, it's like there's like 2 spots left.
Yeah.
It's doing awesome.
Yeah. So it's worth it.
Hats off to Ryan. I mean, that was the first true test, and he crushed it, and just knocked it out of the park. So, he's just been owning that seat ever since there. Other than those 2 things, which fighting with a railroad, that in itself is a really challenging thing. Site turned out beautiful. Really, really turned out great.
Yeah.
It flows good. Burlington has led our portfolio in rentals the past 2 months.
Yes, it has.
Which has been crazy to watch there.
By a lot.
By a lot. It set the all-time record at our storage across the board. So it took a minute to get going. We always talk about this on Nomad side as well, but we always expect to open the doors on the self-storage facility and have a wait list of 50 people, which would be great, but that has yet to happen. Maybe if we open up one in like New York or somewhere that's just like crazy saturated.
Yeah, but then it'd be like $12 million a square foot.
It would be every penny we had. Yeah. So it took a minute to kind of get on its feet there. We do have an extra space in that market there, relatively close to us. So kind of challenged on the marketing side or management side with that. But past 2 months, it's led our portfolio and lease up. I think we're almost at 50%. I think we're 45 or 46% occupied. So it's a great facility.
Yeah.
It's great.
And I would say overall, the city of Burlington was great to work with.
Oh, yeah.
You know, compared to some others that we've done. Yeah, there was challenges, and the railroad wasn't their fault, and the demo, you know, mishap, it was fixed in an hour, you know.
Yeah.
And other than that, our plan revisions and the way they worked with us in our parking lot and all that stuff, they were great to work with.
Yeah.
Shout out to Byron. I remember. Yeah,
Yes,
he was
Byron. Oh, yeah.
Byron was the man.
He was the man.
He was so responsive. You know, coordinated the right people in the right meetings. That's all you could ask for. Like,
Absolutely.
You know, they were a pleasure to work with. So that was really cool.
Any other thoughts from the construction side of Burlington?
No, the only thing that sticks out is the basement, the lighting, how difficult it could be if you have a limited head height clearance.
Yep.
What you could actually do with the lights, because if the ceiling is so low and you affix a light to it, and then you have your partitions for your storage that come up like right underneath it, it really blocks the light. And so I think we had to add 20 light fixtures in the basement alone because of all these dark spots. That, when I say it, it sounds so simple.
Yeah, yeah.
But when you see the lighting plan, you're like, oh, that's a ton of lights. And then you install the lights, and then you install the storage units, and then the lights turn
You
on.
can't see. You're like, are the lights on down
Yeah,
here?
it's like, what is going on? So that was a challenge. I remember that. Oh, wait. There's more.
Yeah, what were you going to say? I'll let you go first.
The full job site shutdown that we caused?
Did we cause one?
Yeah.
Oh.
Asbestos abatement?
Oh, yes. Oh, yeah,
That was the
absolutely.
first-
Oh, my gosh, yes.
That was the first one that we were like, you know
How-
what, let's pony up.
Please speak on it. Yes, I totally forgot about that.
Yeah.
Listen to us. We're like, yeah, it was just relative, easy
Yeah,
conversion.
easy.
Oh, well, what about this? What about,
Yeah,
oh, my
I
gosh,
know.
can you believe?
Yeah.
We just said full job site
We
shutdown.
just forget.
We have to tell everyone
Yeah.
now. Okay.
So talk about stuff that isn't in the budget. There was a site walk where we were just looking around and said, you know, this building was built back in the 50s, 40s, whatever it was. And, you know, some of the pipe wrap looked like asbestos. And we were like, you know, it would be best if we removed the asbestos prior to everybody storing all their stuff inside.
Mm-hmm.
Because if the storage facility is full, to remove that asbestos I don't want to say it would be impossible. I just don't know how in the world you'd do it efficiently.
It'd be a lot more time and cost.
Yeah, it would be absurd. We had the building empty, and we were like, should we do it? Because we think if we sold the building and gave them a clean certification that there was no asbestos in the building, people would probably love that.
Yeah.
A buyer would absolutely love to have that. So we're looking at the pipe wrap, and we see more of it and more of it and more of it. And
Is that it? Is that
and I'm pretty sure it was Eric who was like, yeah, we got to take it out.
Yeah.
And so we ended up moving forward. We found, actually, it was a local contractor here, Four Seasons.
From Wilmington? Oh,
yeah,
yes, I forgot.
Four Seasons Demo.
Yep.
And they were able to contract a asbestos abatement guy up there.
Yep.
And yeah, we went forward with them, and it was a great process. And yeah, we're very glad we did. It did cost a lot. I think in exchange we did was we left the structure on the roof.
Yep.
We just couldn't afford to demo that and do the asbestos at the same time.
Which you can't see from
No.
anywhere. In an ideal world, we'd take this down, but it's like, man, it's going to cost a lot because there was a structural and all this, and it's like, let's leave it.
Yeah.
Because it doesn't do anything anyways, and
It's
you
just,
can't see it.
It's
so.
just standing there. Yeah, we went with the asbestos abatement, had to shut down the full job site. Nobody was allowed to be in there. The only other trade that could be there was the roofers, to be on the roof because that's way outside the building. We shut down the job site for about 3 weeks. You have to get it tested, then you have to send it to the state and have a state-approved plan, an abatement plan, and then the guys come in, shut down the job site. They get the fans in there.
They're certified.
They're
for
certified,
This, so
yep.
they're the only ones with the certification that can be on there. Yeah.
Full respirators. They have to like wet it, bag it, double bag it.
Yep.
Slap a sticker on it, bring it to a approved dump, all that kind of stuff. So, yeah, that cost us about 3 weeks. We're very glad we did it now, but in the moment, it's like, oh, that's 3 weeks on the schedule.
So we always, we talked about survey with the Alta, but we also always get a phase 1 environmental survey done for all of our properties that we do. It's sort of a standard for commercial real estate. And doing these older building conversions, we do run into that there is asbestos or can be asbestos there. And so Burlington had definitely the most asbestos that was noted in there. They noted it on the pipes. They didn't note how much it was, but that was when our site walk was. When we were walking around, it's like, okay, that's what it is. And then we're looking around, and it's like, okay, there's a lot here. Yeah. Because I know we've had some smaller, like way smaller areas in other buildings which is not a full job site shutdown. It can just be one little corner because that's where it's contained to and all that. So Burlington was the first one that was like, hey, now's the time to do it. It was a hard decision and a hard check to write, but for the resale value, for just getting it out of the building, getting a clean bill of health, the decision was made. So yeah, we always do a phase one anyways. For our, banks require, we want to know, we do that for, is there an underground oil tank buried? Is there asbestos? Is there, what issues are there? That was why we did it. And that was the right call for sure. Yeah. Because it would be really a pain to go do that right now. Absolutely. I'm thinking about all those units in there. Yeah. It could be a nightmare. So yeah. Is there anything else we could add on to top of that? I mean, we've covered job site shutdown twice. Once with a demo permit where a husband and wife had conflicting answers. We covered an argument and a dispute between a railroad about an easement from 1880. Yeah. We covered asbestos. We've covered floor loads. We've covered added lighting. Easy project. Yeah. Why did we think that project was so easy? Oh my gosh, our bar is. It's because it's been 2 years and we've forgotten some of it. Yeah, that's true. Yeah. And we say it all the time. Like every time that we have a challenge, something that doesn't go right, every time we learn, it's an opportunity for us to learn. If you look at it through that lens, and we try really hard to implement the systems. We try and say, how do we avoid this next time? How do we foresee this next time? How do we become better builders, and then ultimately better owners, operators, and investors? Yeah. So, love it. Well, let's wrap it up before we forget about some other painful memory that we had. No, that was it. That was it. We've covered it all. Yeah. We covered all those challenges, those opportunities. Yes. And then we ended it with, it led the portfolio in lease up for the past 2 months. So, I mean, that's beautiful. Yeah. I mean, isn't that great? It's not on like some crazy, absurd main road. No, it's actually on probably one of our lower visibility roads in our portfolio. So, like, that's pretty cool. That is really cool. So, even through all those opportunities, it's leasing up. It's in a great area. Yeah. It's very strategic with our other sites in that area. Yeah. And so, we're hoping one day when we go to sell it, we can package it with some other sites and get a higher premium for it. But until then, we're going to keep leasing it up. Elm knocked it out of the park. Yeah. So, like that. Awesome. Well, thanks for joining us on Season 2, Episode 18. Check back in next time. See ya.